Welcome to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse, where host Michael Leiner talks to the best in the business about community, impact, business, and donuts. Here's your host, Michael Leiner.
Welcome to another episode of the Triple D Podcast. I am so excited today. I have an awesome guest that I'm excited to get to know better in front of all of you, Matt Castelluccio. Matt is the Vice President of Community Engagement at the United Spinal Association. Am I introducing that all right?
You are doing fine.
Perfect. And it's an awesome organization that I know about, in particular from some of my clients who have tapped into your resource bank of services in the past, but I'm excited to get to know you and see how we can further a relationship together to help more people, because that's what everything that I do is really about. Matt, in your line of work, everybody has a story. Tell me how you got to where you are. How did you get to the United Spinal Association?
Wow. So 21 years ago, I was involved in a motorcycle accident at the age of 26, which resulted in a multiple spinal cord injuries, leaving me paralyzed. At the time when the accident happened, I went through the whole gamut of rehab and everything else, and I was discharged home I moved in with my sister. I had to give up my apartment, and I was just kind of in this limbo. And through online searching, I was seeking answers, help, support, guidance, and I came upon this organization called United Spinal. And, as I dove into kind of what they offered, I realized it was like this core community of individuals that, were there to help and really help guide me through that initial phase. It gave me that kind of sense of support and confidence in my pursuit to navigate this road of recovery. And, from there, I became involved. I changed gears. I was an accountant, prior to my injury. And I realized, well, I want to go down this road of disability services to explore this, to help others, because I benefited so greatly from it. I want to help others and others to not feel lost like I did. So I started down the road. I entered into different positions in the realm of disability services, and then I ultimately became a chapter leader for the Hudson Valley chapter in New York for United Spinal, because we have chapters all over the country, and that's kind of our localized support system. So we have the National United Spinal Organization, and we have all these chapters that support locally, provide programming, engagement opportunities. So I launched a chapter because I wanted to be that support system in my area so that no one felt that feeling of loss that I did. And from there, it kind of evolved, and I managed my chapter for a while. But my goal was I wanted to explore all aspects of rehab and everything. So I worked for a rehab for about 14 years in different roles because I wanted to learn different aspects. I was on the unit as a peer support program coordinator. Then I went to community-based programming development. Then I went into admissions because I want to understand what were the barriers to people getting into rehab and, what does it take? And then I got into other programming. Then I left the rehab and I want to learn what community-based services and programs were available. So I went to work for an organization, Center for Independent Living in my area. And I wanted to learn what systems of support were there that I didn't know about, that people might not know about. So I took a job as director there in independent living services to learn that aspect. And then from there, an opportunity opened up at the National Organization for United Spinal. So initially, I took a job as director of the Resource Center, Community Support Programming, and then it evolved to my position now of Vice President of Community Engagement, which encompasses a few aspects of the United Spinal Organization.
So you've touched on so many of the different things that United Spinal does to help people. support groups. It sounds like at the beginning that was your introduction to the group, is participating in support groups. But then you talked about the resource center. Tell me about that. If I or a person were to have a spinal cord injury, what can I turn to United Spinal to help me with?
So the resource center is a core function of United Spinal, right? Because, what we do in the resource center is we help try to connect people with available resources in their community to address whatever need they might have, whether it's legal services for Social Security related issues, or whether it's, community support programming, housing issues. So we receive about 5,000 inquiries per year. And these inquiries come through different methods, either electronically, through emails, through our website, or through phone calls. And what my team does, and my team is made up of individuals either with lived experience, people with a disability, or people that have experience working in the field of disability. And what we do is we field these inquiries and we try to assess their need and then align them. Because you can imagine, right? Even with the internet, there's tons of resources out there, but sometimes it's overwhelming. And trying to align yourself with that right service or support system, sometimes there's too many resources out there. So my team does is we try to align them, and then we also ensure that that resource fulfills the need of that client, right? So that we don't just send them off blindly, that we make sure that they are supported through the process and that they're challenged. So it really is an integral part of our organization because it helps guide that person. And if we can address their need internally through one of our many other departments, we also do that. So sometimes with housing, it's not only aligning them with a resource in the community, it's also connecting them with our advocacy department so they can better understand their rights to be able to advocate for themselves to meet their needs.
Are there specific, I'm just thinking about the different needs, and 5,000 inquiries a year, it's huge. Are there specific needs or challenges that come up for people who suffered spinal cord injuries that are unique to that group of people? So, across the spectrum of people with disabilities, there's going to be housing issues, there's going to be disability issues, social security issues that come up. But is there anything that's like very specific or unique to people who had spinal cord injuries?
Certainly. There are definitely aspects of mobility impairment individuals that are unique to our community, right? So one big piece that comes to mind is equipment access, right? Proper equipment. Insurance has reduced their coverage rates for a lot of equipment and has made it very challenging for people to get even the most basic equipment needed for independence. So what our advocacy and government policy team is doing, is trying to rewrite some of those policies and get federal government to support our change. So proper equipment from a wheelchair, components of a wheelchair, right? Some individuals are not even getting wheelchairs, right? Some individuals maintenance on a wheelchair. So you might get the wheelchair, but then if you have an issue with your wheelchair, getting insurance to cover that repair in a timely fashion. Without our wheelchair, we are rendered dependent, right? We lose all aspects of independence. Other aspects of our things is like bathroom equipment, covering that, my home modifications. These are expenses that are not covered by insurance. Like bathroom equipment, for the most part, a lot of insurances do not cover a shower bench, do not cover certain aspects, bowel regime equipment and stuff like that. Key things that people have to shell out of pocket for. And when you're already on a reduced income, right, it's really hard to cover these additional expenses. So we work hard as an organization to advocate at a government level and a local level to try to change some of the policies, Medicare's language, so that we can drive change across the board of insurances to cover a lot of these equipment and ensure our population has what they need to remain independent and engaging community members.
I just saw a news piece the other day that really concerns me for my clients, but really the disability population in the United States as a whole, which is, I don't know if you saw this, but they're not going to be renewing telehealth services for Medicare. And I'm imagining that that's going to have, just because of the difficulty with mobility, telehealth has probably been amazing for so many people in the spinal injury, in the spinal cord injury community. But what are you hearing about this going forward if they eliminate telehealth services, which I'm sure so many people are relying on?
It definitely significantly impacts our community, right? As you can imagine, right? For us, for some of our community members to go to a doctor's office is near impossible from all aspects, from transportation barriers to, accessing, medical care could be hours away from some of our rural clients, right? Some individuals, one you were asking about barriers, one big one is home health aides and support in the
Sure.
home health, right? So getting a home health aide to go with you to an appointment. So telehealth has been an asset to us. So I mean, there is a lot of concern. We've been advocating to try to uh, overturn some of the decisions to eliminate, from a state level to a government federal level, to try to ensure that they see the benefits of covering these costs from a doctor's office standpoint. I mean, mental health is a big piece in our community, right? So telehealth, accessing a psychologist in many communities, there's many therapy offices are not accessible. Having a telehealth access to telehealth for mental health services for an individual is crucial, especially during a time like when you had COVID and other aspects of things. People are left feeling lost, discouraged, you know, and having access to proper mental health through telehealth services is key. So we are currently working hard to ensure that we can try to overturn any decisions that might impact coverage. But at times it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like every day for the last 5 weeks, I've turned on the news and the world just keeps shifting in all these ways that I never would have expected. But that's one that just seems like it's good for everybody. Um, I shot this video, and I hate being a fatalist because that's not my personality. I'm like the most optimistic person you can find. But, I shot this video earlier that I keep thinking about today, where it almost feels like we're transitioning into like a survival of the fittest type society. Like there was just this, there was just this study that was done that showed that the social security system alone saved 205 billion. Did you see this? $205 billion by COVID kind of clearing the unhealthy part of our population out. And that saved $205 billion. Really, the savings were closer to $300 billion, but there were costs that go along with that. But the actual net was $205 billion. And I'm scared because I feel like now we've got this new government agency that's coming in, the Department of Government Efficiency. And there's studies out there which show, hey, when we stop providing all these expensive resources to people, when we let the government kind of dictate things this way, people just kind of fade out. And there's a natural savings there, which the billionaires in our society, they don't have a problem getting a wheelchair. They don't have a problem getting access to appropriate medical care, but who gets hurt are the most vulnerable people that we have. And I'm scared, man. I'm
Yeah, no,
scared.
there's a loss of humanity in our community, right? That sense of value for life and well-being, right?
Yeah.
We have individuals can't get into proper medical care. So you have a spinal cord injury. When I got hurt 21 years ago,
Yeah.
I spent 4.5, almost 5 months in rehab, and that still wasn't enough to gather enough resources and knowledge about my recovery to be able to embrace this as I transition out in the community. Now they've taken that and shrunk it down to 4 to 6 weeks. And imagine your first 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, that person can't even wrap their head around what has happened to them, right? So those 2 weeks are a wash. Now you only have 2 weeks of someone engaging, and then they're discharged home. What is the potential for success with that? And then what happens is then you have these reoccurrences of rehospitalization, secondary conditions that all could have been prevented if they saw the value in giving upfront the care and support and education to that person for longevity. And then people, what ends up happening is they end up in nursing homes. And trying to get someone out of a nursing home into the community is another challenge. I mean, it's near impossible. And it's terrible. And no nursing home is equipped to manage someone with the complexity of injuries that some of our community members have. So it's a vicious cycle, and it only seems to be getting more and more challenging. And that's why our resource center is constantly getting calls from individuals asking for help. And we struggle to find the help, and it shouldn't be, that I'm fighting with a systematic, there really needs to be a systematic change across the board, from a state level to a federal level. There needs to be someone to see the value. Like, if you give this person the tools up front, they become active citizens that will pay taxes and work and live a full life. I mean, we have, there's been a big push for assisted suicide movement, which scares the hell out of me that a doctor will give someone at a vulnerable state the ability to make a choice to take their own lives at a time when the person doesn't see the light at the end of the tunnel and hasn't been given all the tools and equipment to do so. And it terrifies me because I know the way I felt when I first got hurt. You feel lost. You feel like a burden. You don't see the potential. And it takes time. And some people, it takes a long time and at different stages. So that terrifies me that somebody would even consider, a medical professional would even consider that as an option for someone that they define terminal like so loosely in our community.
Yeah. And I love the piece that you said at the end, which is like the definition of terminal. It feels like all of these terms that we use, terminal, disabled, they keep being redefined in ways that are scarier and scarier. And now the amount of support that's going to be there for all these services is just going to be less and less and less. Is this like a particularly active time on the policy legislative side of the organization? What are like the big things that are being worked on right now? If I wanted to go to my congressman, my senator on behalf of United Spinal, what are the big like talking points right now that people are hot about that are important?
Well, a major one is, the home health situation, right? Getting proper coverage for home health aides, empowering consumers for consumer-directed, home health services in their community, getting proper, salaries for those home health aides. Some of those home health aides are making less money than people in, food services program. It's terrible. They have a crucial role, and yet they're being underpaid. They have no benefits, or limited benefits. It's a very big challenge. So that's a major issue right there that we've been tackling. The equipment and servicing equipment and making sure that equipment gets covered and that we get proper care, through that process. Length of stay in a rehab, getting access to proper rehab, and then length of stay at the rehab has been. We have a very strong advocacy department and government policy department. Our advocacy department has worked, night and day to create this, national platform of constituents throughout to help our members identify how they can get involved, and also who their congressional leaders are, and to create a unified front to try to drive change at a local, state, and federal level. Because without our members' involvement and professionals' involvement, we need a full front movement. And that's why we expanded our scope from just spinal cord to all wheelchair users. Because we recognize a lot of these challenges are faced by all individuals that use mobility equipment across the board. And if we can unite as one front and collaborate with other organizations to drive this forward, then we have a stronger voice and we can make a significant change.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask you a question that I've been seeing in my practice a little bit, in my law practice, and I'm just curious if you have a thought or response. I know that employment supports is one of the big, pieces to the puzzle with United Spinal, and I've been seeing. Are you familiar with how a Social Security disability hearing goes at all?
Yes and no. Like, I don't know all the nuances with it, but I do know because when I worked in the SIL, a lot of our clients required legal assistance to navigate the Social Security.
So towards the end of every disability hearing, I shouldn't say every disability hearing, but 98% of them, Social Security calls upon an expert who's called a vocational expert, okay, to come and offer an opinion about whether or not somebody can work with different functional limitations. I've noticed a troubling trend lately where vocational experts will say that requiring a wheelchair in the work setting does not require an accommodation. If somebody is in a sedentary job, meaning maybe they're doing something that's like clerical or seated production work, they don't need workspace modifications. They don't need, basically, they can work alongside everybody else, without needing any adjustments or extra supports. Is that true or false in your experience?
Oh, it's completely false, right? Providing, accommodation is a crucial part of ensuring that someone can fulfill their function, whether it be systems of support through the computer. Look, anyone with any functional ability can be an active, functional employee for any job, right? We have lawyers, that are high quads, have no use of their arms, but through accommodations and systems of support, they are fully functioning legal advisors. And they bring a very unique perspective to the organization. Same thing with accountants, anything else. So accommodations are crucial, and they are a core piece of the ADA. Providing employment support in the environment is key. And for a vocational rehab specialist to state that someone does not, it shocks me that someone would say that they don't see the value in providing those accommodations.
I had a vocational expert say that just today, and I went pretty hard after them, and eventually the judge just cut me off and signaled that it's not necessary because he's going to approve the claim. So I'm kind of wasting everybody's time. But there's just this like bulldog in me that it's like, maybe if I ask these questions, it'll change somebody's mind. But exactly what you said is how I feel. It's shocking to me that somebody who works in that profession could possibly think that somebody would be able to work without any supports whatsoever. And remember, so when you're giving the examples of lawyers, accountants, we're talking about jobs where, frankly, the most important part of that person's job is their brain. But when these vocational experts are testifying in disability hearings, they're really focused on describing whether or not there's unskilled type work that can be done, where the most important part of somebody's, the most important work traits are usually their hands and arms or their feet and their legs. maybe, they have to make some simple decisions and they can cognitively do that. But it disgusted me. And it's something that it happened today, but today wasn't the first time. Today wasn't even the first time this month that that's happened. And I'm concerned that that's just one of the trends that we're seeing, which is even inside of this agency, which is supposed to be there and has this program to help people who can't work. That's the purpose of it. There's even just a policy shift where they can sweep people under the rug and say, well, if you have a wheelchair, then, you're able to, navigate around. You could put if you had to carry files, you could put them in your lap and just wheel around. Just, it's bananas to me.
You know what? When I had this happen once when I was at the Sill, there was a young man came in, mobility impaired as a result of a car accident, and he was a contractor. He was a carpenter, builder. Now, obviously, due to mobility impairments, so a vocational person was sitting with him and suggesting other alternatives. Well, you could do customer service and do this. And he was getting frustrated. He's like, I grew up only knowing one thing. I knew how to swing a hammer, how to assess a job, how to look at plans. So he was frustrated. And then he came into my office and he was discouraged. He was just going to be on Social Security for the rest of his life and just accept whatever. But he didn't want that. He wanted more, but he just didn't see the possibility. After sitting with him a bit, I said, well, what could you do in the realm of what you know with the limitations? He's, well, I still can assess plans. I still can assess jobs. I just can't necessarily swing the hammer the way I did or stuff. So I said, could you be a project manager for someone? I guess I could with the right wheelchair and the right setup. I could. That guy, and I was upset with the vocational rehab. I said, you didn't think outside the box. That guy went back. He became a project manager with the right power chair. It was a manual chair used normally, but he got a power chair that he can navigate job sites with that could go off-roading a little bit because, some job sites are not always smooth. He got a foldable ramp that he could unfold and go up into some of the structures. He was able to run jobs and has worked for the last 15 or so years as a project manager in the field, and loves it, is successful, got married, has kids now, is really... and what drove me nuts when I talked to vocational rehab specialists as I was kind of navigating this potential path for this gentleman, they didn't see it. And I said, one of my problems is that you didn't think outside the box. You saw the basic functions of a job and saw it as, well, it's a very, hands-on type work. But you didn't look at the other aspects and say, well, maybe there's something we could do along the lines, and let me figure this out. You were going to stick this person as a customer service rep, and he would have been miserable. And he didn't want to do it, and it really shined a light on some. Now, there are some great vocational rehab specialists that really see the potential and really know their job. But some individuals in all aspects of some of our support systems fall into these ruts of, if you can't do this, this is, accept mediocrity. You don't need accommodation. If you can't do the job without accommodations, then you shouldn't be in that field any longer. And it's like, oh man, no, you're looking at it with the wrong lens.
I love that. Well, this has been a great conversation, Matt. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your story and give me some feedback to some of my thoughts. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the ways that maybe, I can use my various platforms to help the, spinal cord injury community. And just thank you so much for being on here with me today.
Michael, thank you for having us. I would love to add you as a resource.
Oh, we'd love that.
Our resource library so that my community support team knows that it can turn to you to help address some of our Social Security needs out in the community. And I would like thank you again for allowing me to showcase some of the work that we do at United Spinal. And I really value what we do, and I love opportunities to share it with the community.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Triple D Podcast, Donuts, Disability, and Discourse. Rate, subscribe, and tune in next week for more discourse and donuts.